us sometimes. So, you know, the hyperbolic phrases like, we met Hannah before this, a remarkable young woman. How could they possibly know that in seconds of a meeting?
Well, maybe
but perhaps
A stars and all of these.
maybe perhaps we can look past the corn if one message gets through.
He was here for 20 minutes, and you have to excuse a little corn, surely.
A lot of corn.
Perhaps it's his Irish heritage getting to him. He just was giving a bit of the blarney.
Yeah, I mean, you expect high-flowing rhetoric at times like this, don't you? I mean, he's got a short time to get his message across. But what would you want him to say that he didn't say? I'd
have liked him to have said it a lot shorter. I think he's a great speaker.
Yes.
And can be an incantatory speaker.
Yes.
But if it's over a drawn-out phase, the cloth-earedness jarred as well, which was something that Clinton never did. He got pronunciations wrong. Clinton's staff work was much better. But that was because, I suppose, because the stakes were so much higher.
And there was so much more involved.
Exactly.
In it.
And there's so much more at stake. This is a swing through. This is part of the backdrop. He makes a speech here to young people, and he chooses young people. As Catherine says, this has been a theme of the presidency and a theme for Michelle Obama in particular. So he picks on a valid theme that has some reality in his presidency. But for the rest of it, it really is swing-through stuff. It's celeb stuff, and that's what the young people came out to see when they saw it.
And Catherine, you could say that a few minutes of inspirational, motivational chat is not a bad thing from time to time.
Not a bad thing to touch base. And of course, if he did go on too long, President Clinton was not known for his brevity, and therefore maybe he thought that people would like this lengthy message full of many platitudes, as you say, but sound bites and quotes. Certainly, take down your walls was a very famous phrase by another president. Maybe knock down your walls and reach out across the divide is something he can say directly to the young people. There are politicians sitting there in a row looking very stony-faced, but I think you could see at the end also the graciousness of turning to those people who were at his back for the entire speech.
And refused to sit down, the young people who wouldn't
And he
sit down.
reached out to them, and you saw Michelle hugging someone, so it really was, in some way, I think, an attempt at memorability, which maybe sacrificed other things of just saying, hi, y'all, we're going to Enniskillen, but nevertheless telling people what he thought he hoped for them.
Maybe you had to be there, Fionnuala. Tara Mills was. Tara, what's the immediate reaction to the speech from the POTUS and FLOTUS?
Well, it's been a very interesting morning. I'm not sure if you could see in the pictures that you had earlier, but actually it all was a bit too much for some of the students. We had a couple of almost fainting incidents and a few students, particularly the ones behind President Obama, who had to walk off. But let's talk about some of the speeches. You've concentrated mostly on the President's speech. Let's hear, Rick Wilford, what you thought of Hannah Nelson's speech. I mean, it was standout.
It was a real scene setter, and I think what was interesting about it was it set the narrative thread that connected all three speeches, actually. She was speaking as a 16-year-old with hope and aspirations for the future. Michelle Obama, of course, particular interest in education. There was a kind of neat joined-upness, I think, across all three speeches. Which she set the tone for. You know, she was saying, look, yes, we have a past, but actually I live in the present and I want a future. I don't want that future to be mortgaged by the past, as it were. That's not to sort of dismiss the past, but that's simply to say that, you know, it shouldn't be an anchor on our ambitions and our aspirations. And that message was continued by Michelle Obama and the President.
Yeah, and perhaps mature beyond her years, because we're hoping to hear from her shortly, but she wrote that speech herself. It was part of a competition to win the prize of introducing the President and the First Lady. But things like peace is not easy. For a 16-year-old, that's pretty incisive.
No, it just showed a certain maturity, I think, that should commend itself to a lot of other people in Northern Ireland. You know, she's, in that respect, I suppose, mature beyond her very, very young years. And it's a feather in a cap for her, and of course it's a feather in a cap for Messity as well, you know, as one of their pupils. But what she embodies is this kind of hope and aspiration that was fueled by Michelle Obama, that was fueled by Barack Obama, in terms of their own backgrounds and where they came from and what their expectations were when they were Hannah's age, you know, which were narrow, constricted by race, by relative poverty and so on, and family circumstances, you know. And basically they're saying, all three of them are saying in their different ways, the same message, which is we mustn't let the future be, as it were, tarnished or tainted. It's not we're forgetting the future, we're dealing with the future, but we mustn't let that overshadow the future of new generations who, as Michelle Obama said, are going to produce the political classes in 20 years' time.
Yes, because President Obama obviously was the local stage, the world stage, but she was very much talking to the children in that room.
She was. I mean, all three speeches, I think, were... The balance was slightly different across all three, but they were all saying, look, you are the future to the young people. This was a set of speeches that were designed to inspire not only our current political leadership, but actually to raise the sights and the ambitions and the principles and the values of the next generation, I think, and that they shouldn't be passive about it. They should be proactive. They shouldn't let the political classes tread water, because they have expectations that need to be met. They have aspirations and dreams that need to be fulfilled. And I think that was what Hannah set out from the first, and that was given hefty shoves. But Barack Obama made very clear that the United States will be with our political leadership as they move forward, but they have to move forward because the economic development of Northern Ireland relies on that progress.
Rick, thanks very much indeed. And from the Waterfront, it's back to you, Noel.
We're focusing on events in Northern Ireland, of course, today, but this is a global summit, and in Enniskillen, our political editor, Mark Davenport, has been talking to two young people from Israel and Palestine who've been following events here.
Here in Fermanagh, I'm now actually joined by two youngsters who are going to be at the Clinton Centre during the course of the day. They've been here in Northern Ireland, but not youngsters from Northern Ireland, youngsters from Israel and Palestine who are learning from our experiences. Liat Bayram from Israel and Dana Hanna from Palestine, East Jerusalem. Liat, you've been looking at the pictures of our young people waiting to hear from the President, and actually he did a similar kind of event in Jerusalem, appealing over the heads of the politicians to the young people. You were there. What was it like?
Well, it was amazing. It was very inspirational. I think he made a very good choice to speak directly to young people. And basically the message was hope. I think it was to make a change for us, as young people, and to look to a better future. So yeah, I was overwhelmed by his speech.
And Dana, you're here learning from the Northern Ireland experience. We often focus on our little short-term difficulties here in Northern Ireland, but what do you think Northern Ireland has to teach areas like Israel and Palestine, if anything?
First of all, as she said hope. That's a very important word, because coming out from a conflict into another conflict, or now it's a post-conflict experience, which is an amazing era for you. But the fact that we went through all the historical and all the events that have been through the conflict, it's a learning process, because you put yourself out of there into another conflict, and you put yourself out of the box in order to see and learn new things. I'm still not sure how much that has an impact directly to my conflict, but it's a learning process.
At least, obviously, some terrible things happening on the ground in Syria at the moment, worrying matter for people all across the Middle East. They're not expecting a lot of progress here, but at least they're talking about it there.
Well, it's very important to talk, and also very, very worried about the situation in Syria and hoping it will hopefully come to an end as soon as possible. But what I really want to say is that talking is the only solution. I mean, to put down the weapons and just talk. I mean, we've been talking this past week, and it hasn't always been very easy. There's a lot of emotions, which is very natural for both sides, but it has to be done. You have to sit and talk even about the hard things, and just like we were sitting and doing it, our leaders have to do the same.
Okay, Liat Bayram, Dana Hanna, thanks very much for joining us here in Fermanagh. That's all from now from Enniskillen.
Thanks, Mark. Well, it was a big day in the life of 16-year-old Hannah Nelson, introducing the First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama. Hannah, I think, is with Maggie Taggart down at the waterfront.
Yes, indeed. I've managed to get Hannah Nelson, 16 years old, just had the biggest event of your life, I would say. Hannah, what was that like for you?
It was amazing. It was be honoured to be here as well.
I know you had a pre-meeting with Barack Obama and Michelle. What did they say?
it was really nice. It was quite casual, and it made me feel a lot more comfortable about going on. So it was really nice. And they were just generally talking about my speech, and then about summer, and just asking me casual questions like what was I doing.
Well, your speech won you this honour of being on the stage, and it was all about keeping a permanent peace. Are you worried as a young person today, representing all the young people today, are you worried that peace is fragile?
Yeah, definitely, because you never really know. There's some people out there who don't want peace, but I think definitely peace. Everyone wants to live in a society where you feel safe and you feel happy, and I think that's what we need to work for achieving.
It looks as though you're saying it needs a great leap of confidence for people to live together.
Yeah, and every step we make, it'll be a bigger difference and a better difference. So.
Michelle Obama was very keen to say that young people are in a very powerful position. Do you feel powerful?
Yeah, I feel like, as I said in my speech, I think my age group should be the focus, and because we are the ones who are going to grow up and try to bring peace to everybody and pass it on to the next generations to come.
Do you really have an open mind, as she said?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people will be watching you in your future to see what you've done, a day that Hannah will not forget in a long time. Back to studio.
Thank you, Maggie. A very poised performance indeed. Now let's join our political editor, Mark Davenport, again. He's live with us now. Mark, too much flannel, not enough substance in the speech, or the other way around?
Well, I think it was pretty show busy. It was broad brush stuff. I mean, there are a few things, you can be cynical about this, but there were a few aspects that I think will touch with people. I mean, just the phrase, what's the crack, that touched home, I think, with a bit of the audience. He got some of his pronunciations right. He got the Lord Mayor right. Difficult to do, Martin Amelia. He actually got damn Mary Peters pretty wrong, along with, I think, a few other pronunciations. In terms of the general message, interesting that he compared the whole business of racism in the United States, the history of the United States, with what's going on here in relation to sectarianism. Interesting that he talked about bringing down walls. He's actually going to Berlin on this trip later on, and that was the famous place where JFK talked about the wall there and talked about being ein Berliner in his speech. And also, I mean, this tactic, as we heard there from the young Israeli woman, is something which the president has used elsewhere, addressing young people, appealing over the heads of the politicians. And I think you could see this as a sort of a two-way street. He wants to inspire young people, but he also wants to be seen as an inspirational figure. And if he surrounds himself by the younger generation, looking to the future, getting into the broad brush strokes rather than being bogged down in what he thinks of an economic package or what he thinks of trade and tax issues, then I think he feels that that's good for him. So there's something in it for him by surrounding himself by these bright-eyed teenagers around the world.
Was it Sarah Palin who talked about all this hopey-feely stuff that you know, has formed such a theme of Barack, from the hope of ambition? You know, hope has been a big theme of President Obama's candidacy and time in the White House.
Well, of course, famously, Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize on the basis of talking a good talk rather than necessarily walking a good walk. And I mean, he does that, and he does that around the world. There's then obviously all sorts of questions about his policies, whether it be in relation to the Middle East or wherever else. I think, you know, he will have made a mark on many of those young people. Obviously, some of them have been up since quite early on and were finding it a bit hard going. It's easy, and we've heard from others before. I remember the mayor of New York talking about bringing down the walls. We all know that on the ground it's a little bit more difficult. This isn't a Berlin Wall scenario where people living on both sides necessarily want those barriers to come down. It's something that will have to be negotiated. There's still a lot of fear and distrust. But what he's trying to do is push through that and work with the younger generation in order to push through that in the future.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much indeed. Let's nip straight back over to the waterfront and Tara.
Well, Noel, it's got very noisy here all of a sudden. I think all the school children have started to pile out. But joining me now, the Lord Mayor of Belfast, Martin Muller, and Basil McRae, the leader of NI21. Lord Mayor, what did you think?
Well, I thought it was a red letter day for Belfast. I thought it was a fantastic speech. I think he has has set the scene for continuing to build the peace. He's set the scene for making greater investment in Belfast, and we heard his words about fairness, tolerance, justice, and also his pledge that Irish America and America will stand by the peace process as long as we continue to move forward. And I think that's everyone's resolve today, to continue the work of peace.
An impressive performance by the First Lady and, of course, by our very own Hannah Nelson.
Well, I got to meet the First Lady and President Obama and Hannah, and I think we have three people who are very adept at sending out the message of peace, sending out a message of progress. And in the days ahead, I think the young people who were there today, I think they'll take the message to heart. They are the agents of change in this city, and they're the people who are going to achieve much more than the generation which perhaps created the peace. I think they're going to really bring this society into a bright new future.
And indeed.